Ben's getting creative with
I
those.
feel like I got like a little bull riding.
Yeah.
Or do you need my cowboy hat? I feel like
Welcome,
maybe it's like
everybody.
stripper adjacent. I don't know.
That's where I was going with him when I saw you. Like, wow, he's got a pole somewhere. So everybody, welcome to the Ben and Ryan show. We decided that this has been a very busy first 2 months of 2025. So we've come out with our reflection show. We're going to beat everybody to the punch. So and a lot of things have been going on in our lives. So we say, you know what, we've had a lot of our shows recently where we've had guests and chatted with them about what's going on in their lives. But now it's time that we get to kind of go into what's going on in our lives. And I will throw it out to Ben for the first comments because he's had some of the biggest changes in his life. So Ben, what's been going on in your life?
Just big career shifts. As we've talked about, I'm sure previously on the show, I was co-founder of Envision. Envision was wildly successful for the first 75% of its lifespan, and then not so successful in the back quarter there. And so after about 13, 14, 15 years, depending on how hard you squint, we closed our doors to Envision December 31st. So no more customer access. And I was committed to the company through January. They're basically to put out any fires that might need to be put out, make sure all the customer data was deleted, make sure all the SaaS accounts have been closed and all the bills have been reconciled. And then I kind of just took the last half of January, not off because I was contractually still working for the company, but there was nothing to do. So I just kind of relaxed and was setting up what it was that I was going to do next. And right now I am working for Peter Amiri, who has been a guest on the show previously.
Yeah.
He's come to the last two AMA style, the open mic night kind of to meetings. And so I've been working with him, and they do truck parts manufacturing and distribution, or no, not distribution. I'm still learning the ropes here. But yeah, it's been a shock to the system. I've basically spent the last year or so with no oversight and nobody really caring what I did and not really having any goals other than self-directed goals. I did a lot of development at the last year in Envision, mostly around trying to make it easier for users to offboard their data and get access to things that they want to keep in an offline way. But that was just things I wanted to do. That's what excited me. It's what I felt like I could do right by the customers. And now suddenly there's a team that wants me to show up at a certain time and like get tickets done. I don't, it's
you have tickets you got to do too?
It's so I think it's an interesting time at the company. I don't want to say too much just because I don't know my place exactly, but
Yeah.
It's a relatively small team, like a handful. I think the IT department's like 20 people, and the engineering department is like, I don't know, 10 people, something like that. And I think as a team, we are now kind of learning how to grow and to be effective as a team and deal with communication, especially communication across time zones, and where we put tickets and what's the process for moving tickets and what's the process for pull requests. And I feel a little bit like I'm coming in like a bull in a china shop. I have all these preconceived notions about how teams run. And I was very proud of the way that we ran our team at Envision, my little small, what we called the rainbow team. And I want to come and sprinkle some of that magic in. But at the same time, I don't want to come in with, I don't know what the right word, every team is different. And I don't want to just impose my perspective on another team that's used to work in a different way with this belief that the way we did it at Envision was quote unquote the right way. So it's just been everything is different all of a sudden, and trying to figure out heads and tails of it all.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So when I first found out you were going to work with Peter, I was like, oh, cool. I'm like, I wonder if it was because of the show. Because like I booked behind the scenes stuff. I book all the guests. And so Peter had responded to me that he would be willing to go on the show, and we kind of worked out some details. Actually, Peter was open mic was the first time we met. So I didn't know if like that was the kind of what got them talking, and then all of a sudden Ben's now over there. So I was like, oh, cool. It's the open mic night that brought them
Right.
together.
And he's
but
coming
no.
back in April or something, right? For an actual
Yeah.
show, something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think his. I have to look at the guest list. Yeah, how crazy is like we have guests booked out through April, and
It's
and we've
nuts.
had that. I haven't gone surfing for guests in a while, so I actually need to go back in. We have a couple gaps for in the next 6 weeks. I gotta fill up, but yeah, so it's pretty cool. So we hear a lot about the job market nowadays, and this is kind of why I was excited to chat with you some, because
Mhm.
there's a lot of developers out there, and just people in general in this day and age. There's all the risks out there. How did you find the job market? Was it tight? Was it hard to find opportunities? What did you do to find opportunities?
I mean, I had actually been in contact with Peter several years ago. He had reached out just to see what was going on. And not that we had an ongoing communication, but then he had reached back out towards the end of December of this past year after I had been talking about Envision on this podcast and previous podcasts. And so, I mean, that was kind of, I don't want to say effortless, but that was, that fell into my lap in most regards. I had been looking for other stuff, and to be frank, it was an extremely stressful process. Um, it was I was coming to grips with the idea that I might never work with Cold Fusion again, which is from a professional standpoint. I use it in my personal stuff. I use it on my my blog and other little side projects. So it's not like I would stop using Cold Fusion, but there was definitely a time where I thought I was going to go to a job that required me to just use React all day, React JS, and I wasn't ready for that. And it was kind of depressing. And I definitely, in December, I was definitely having panic attacks, and it was pretty stressful. And I did not feel great. And my hands started to hurt, my wrists started to hurt, and they're starting to feel a lot better. But they're clearly, when I'm stressed, I get my RSI, my repetitive stress injuries, flare up.
Okay.
And so that's been going back down. But I don't know. I did not know how to look for a job, to be frank. I didn't know what the right gestures were. I didn't know if I should. I haven't had to look for a job in a really long time.
Yeah, it was interesting because I had a situation where I'd actually, people know me from Xbyte because I've been with them for a long time, but there was actually a year that I was not at Xbyte. And so by choice, I went to another company that was a potential venture. And it was a different industry out there, mortgages and real estate. And I realized after a year, I just don't love that industry, and it's just not what I wanted to be in. So I then was like, all right, well, I'm still kind of working there, but they know I'm leaving at the same time. So it's like, okay, so it's okay if I'm public about me looking and stuff.
Right.
And so as I put, it was very weird because I'd gone from Xbyte, basically Everest Software was before that, and I was recruited from Everest to Xbyte, so I didn't have to look. And then at Xbyte had been there for both companies had been at for a long time. And then my other company that I went to was basically recruited, or we made a deal to have me leave to go there. And then I'm like, this is the first time in 20 years I've actually had to kind of put feelers out. And I didn't even put anything out there as far as like open to work or whatever LinkedIn things you do.
Yeah.
And I didn't even get to a point where I was necessarily putting out resumes. I went to my contacts. I said, okay, hey guys, contacts of the world. I hit up a bunch of key people I knew, maybe influence people, or maybe in the know. I said, hey, I'm looking to do something else, to get out back in the tech sector. What do you have, or who can you introduce me to, or anyone or if you heard anything? And
yeah,
they helped me make connections. Like, oh yeah, actually I know this company. I've heard they're looking for something, and then they would do some introductions, and then I'm just going to take it from there. But
that's awesome.
I feel for the people who've got to do it the old-fashioned way of doing resumes out there and interviews, because it sounds like it's a really hard market out there.
I mean, I haven't had that many jobs in my life, but all but one, I think, were through people I knew. Whether it was like my dad got me my first internship because the guy who owned the company or like ran the IT department at a company I interned at used to work for my dad. And then um, then I went and I worked for them full time. And then I had another job that I just found through monster.com, I think, back when monster.com was the place to be. But then Epicenter, I co-founded with a guy, Clark Valberg, who I had known from the Cold Fusion meetup group, and we had become friends. And then we started Envision together. And then, now this is through people in the community. And I've never thought of myself as someone who networks. I don't think I'm good at it. I'm definitely not a extrovert. People exhaust me, but I'm cordial and I'm friendly, and I like to practice my people skills. And this is a sample size of one, but just being out and being nice to people and talking to people occasionally seems to work at least some of the time. So I'm feeling very thankful that I've been able to land on my feet, because I have a mortgage to pay, I have a family to feed, I have a dog that requires a shockingly high vet bills.
Getting older.
Yeah, things just hurt,
Well, no, not you. Oh yeah, you, but the dog.
Oh yeah, the dog's definitely getting older for sure. She's actually gone mostly deaf this last year. And I was having just kind of a little bit of a existential crisis as Envision was coming to a close. I was just panicked that everything I had worked hard for my whole life might be taken away from me if I couldn't find a new job. I mean, I'm a little bit of a...
Did the job help you get past that, or was there something else? Did you start doing yoga?
I think I just, we have some savings, so there's the emotional side of me, and then there's the practical academic side. I don't know what the right word is. And so on one hand, I know, okay, we can survive without an income for a certain period of time, but then we have to worry about health insurance. But like, oh, I guess we could survive without health insurance for a while, fingers crossed nothing terrible happens.
Yeah.
So I could intellectually calm myself down, but at a low level, I was just flooded with stress. Like I could feel it in my body. It was like cortisol or whatever. Just the stress hormones were just doing the rounds. And I felt my body felt cold. I felt cold like for 2 straight months. And it was awful, honestly. But the thing that fixed it was feeling like I had something in the bag going forward. So that's not a great answer. I mean, it's it's not a bad answer, but it's not like exactly. Yeah. It is what it is. I didn't go on that many interviews just because I had a bunch of interviews scheduled, and then I couldn't deal with it mentally, so I decided to just take the rest of the year off. So I had started interviewing back in like October, November. And by the time I got to December, I was a nervous wreck. I mean, I was really, really a mess. So I took the rest of December off, and thankfully, I was able to find something. But it was just very overwhelming. And I see, it's like I was dealing with my own thing, and then at the same time, I'd see people on LinkedIn posting things. One just about all kinds of recent layoffs and people suddenly looking for new jobs, but then other people sharing stories about, hey, I've gone on 75 interviews and I haven't gotten a single call back, things like that. And that was all just fuel to the emotional fire. And the interviews were crazy. I mean, crazy is not the right word, but it's like I would go on an interview and I would think to myself, I totally crushed that interview. Like I was jamming out with these people. We were connecting on topics. I felt like I was really bringing stuff to the conversation. And then I would get a pass. Like they would say, no, it's not going to work out. And then I have another interview where I thought to myself, wow, I really screwed the pooch on that one. Like every answer I said was wrong. I didn't have the right stories ready to go. Like tell me a time that you overcame an obstacle, like that kind of stuff. I just didn't have any of that ready to go. I was like, oh, they're never going to talk to me again. And then, I would proceed through interviews at that company. I'm like, how is that even possible? Like, how is my radar for how I feel like I'm doing so off And I don't know. It's just they keep saying, everybody I hear says you just can't take any of it personally. Like, you just have to develop a thick skin.
Yeah.
It's tough though.
I mean, I think one of the lessons from your experience is to put content out there. Because I think one of your big advantages is the fact that you do so much of your own learning. I mean, you're a learner. You
Yeah.
love to learn new stuff, to play with stuff, to tinker, and to teach. So you're putting out all of your posts about what you've done, your blogs. For the person who's not social, your blog's known for the pictures of you posing with people, which is hilarious because you're not. Yeah, that's everyone knows you because of that, or not because of that. They know you.
I
That's
know
one of the reasons they know you. Yeah, but because you never stopped doing that, I think people could see you in the community, and knowing that, hey, look, you're now on the market, led people to you. And so I think a lesson for people out there is, okay, you know what? If you look to not be at a job, then start producing stuff out there. And so people without you having to put resumes out there, people know you're producing stuff out there and that you're knowledgeable. Put your opinions out there.
Right. You're more of a known quantity.
Yeah.
The from everyone that has been through the interview system, like on either side, I feel like the consensus is basically that interviews are broken. They don't really work. I think the best way, and this is not my feeling, this is what people tell me, the best way to know about how someone is going to work is just to actually work with them. And short of being able to work with people, at least I can put something out there that makes myself more of a known quantity, whether it's in my writing or in little projects on GitHub, or just something to say, hey, like, it's not just a fantasy. Like, I can do the things that I talk about, I guess.
I think for developers, I mean, or anyone creative, anyone producing things, to have that portfolio is a huge plus. I mean, if you're coming into an interview without a portfolio, then they really have nothing to base it on other than what you've promised them. And so many people have gotten burnt by people who can't actually do what they say they can do in interviews, that it's great to kind of see stuff that you've actually produced, and they can then take a look at that and say, hey, is this quality or not? Again, that's anyone creating something. So out there. So all good stuff. And you guys got to get out of your comfort zones and be okay to be wrong. I know, Ben, you've talked about how in the early days you had someone come at you and saying, hey, you're the worst coder ever. How could you should never post stuff. And you just got to be like, hey, you know what? I've made it because I have a hater.
I don't, to be clear, I don't like haters, but I try to just be me. Me is the best I know how to be.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
What about, all right, so tell me more about your year. What's going on in your world?
I mean, this podcast is new. I going towards the end of last year, I had no idea that we'd be doing this on a regular basis. So I think you and I kind of got into this and we're like, oh yeah, we'll record some shows. We'll see what happens. And then it's funny. I reached out on LinkedIn to a bunch of people, and all of a sudden they wanted to be on the show.
Heck
and
yeah.
So I was like, all right, well, it's going to go from whenever we want to you and I were talking, and I said, okay, we need a dedicated time to record because I'm just booking guests. So in the early days, we were just, okay, hey, can you do it this time? You and I would go back and forth. And then we both came to the conclusion that we need a time because
time is good.
This
Predictability
back and forth
is nice.
Yeah. So, and this has been big, and just kind of getting out into the different worlds. So because I'm not a developer, it's interesting for me hanging out in developer communities.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm a developer light. I mean, we talked about this, where I can edit code, I can read it, I can get an understanding of what it's trying to do, but I'm not going to be the one producing something from scratch or doing all the new frameworks and stuff like that. That's beyond where my level of knowledge is. But being in this community and having to kind of learn from people and trying to get a base understanding has been interesting, and just being able to relate. Because I know we bring on guests all the time, and I've never told you this, but we interviewing them and chatting with them and having a discussion. And I'm like, man, I'm jealous of Ben. He's got all this like context to like relate to these people. And I'm like, okay, how do I've been on the different sides of the business, sales, marketing sides of things, and so I bring some of that to the table, my experiences. But it's interesting trying to be part of that community, and then so we're out in the different developer communities, and then to say, okay, hey, from a business standpoint, there's got to be because this is part of my job, we want to figure out some way to eventually get an ROI on some of it, or look at that side of things. But so looking at that, and it's not this show necessarily, but in general. And so we're like, okay, how do we go from developer to person buying hardware, or person doing cloud, or person doing AWS services? Because unfortunately, those, like the DevOps or the sysadmins of the world, they're not going to meetups. There's no like, at least I haven't found like a sysadmin meetup where like, oh, all the tech support people get together and they commiserate with how terrible their users are or something. The developers kind of circle around a language and kind of then meet up to talk about that language, and people talking about that stuff. You don't see that in the sysadmin space or DevOps space.
Well, it's especially tough too, because I think the people who do go to conferences that are geared towards platforms and platforms as a service and, like real high level architecture stuff are maybe also not your target customers. Like they're the people who are running, swarms of containers on EC2 and Kubernetes, not necessarily someone walking up to my front door. What's that about? Hold on. Let me see if she rings. I mean, my wife's in the living room. I'll let my wife deal with it. But you know what I mean? It's like
some of those. You're right.
You're in the managed hosting business, and I don't mean that in a diminishing way. Only to say that the people who are going to pay $2,000 for a ticket to go to a conference are probably people who already have a solution, or the mind, the vision of a solution that isn't necessarily the kind of stuff that you guys offer.
You'd think that, but some of them will, they'll want to say, hey, look, they may have Cold Fusion as a part of their company. And so they may say, look, we got the other stuff down, but you know what? This piece of it, we don't do it enough. And so we want your expertise to kind of manage that piece of our business. And so we talk to major brands that have that exact experience, or there's been some acquisition and they have a Cold Fusion app from another company they want to maintain for a certain period of time. Mm-hmm. So we'll get into those, and even outside the Cold Fusion space, because we do manage AWS and Azure as well. We'll get into some of that for bigger companies, but you're right. A lot of times they have their own team that's already done that, and so it would only be for where if they wanted to migrate from like on-prem to cloud or something, and they wanted someone who's they've done that before for people. They may reach out for that point solution, or they just were like, look, yeah, we can do it. We can keep hiring people, but you guys do it for a lot of people, and your experiences matter. And we talk about this for developers. Okay, if all you're doing is this one thing, but other people have done a bunch of other things, then there's a value into the person who's kind of has more experience out there. Like you're extremely valuable because you play around with things, and so you're not just the one trick pony per se. So they'll reach out to us for that as well. But yeah, we deal with a lot of people who are not our customers when we go places. Well, that is a struggle for us.
Maybe this is the year that I become an X-Byte customer.
Maybe.
Dun dun.
Maybe.
Actually, I thought that so we're recording. I don't know. These release pretty fast, but we're recording on February 27th. Oh my God, it's my dog's birthday. Hold on, I got to text my wife. We're recording on February 27th, and Cold Fusion 2025 just dropped on the 25th, I think. And I thought to myself, that would be a good reason to move. It would give me like a moment in time where I could say, okay, now I got to make sure that my code works with 2025. And if I'm doing that, maybe I'm like, okay, I can get one site working in 2025, move it over to Xbyte. Next site working in 2025, move it over to Xbyte. That could be
So,
a
so I'd love
pattern.
to help you out, but sorry,
Oh, but
Adobe,
you don't support 2025.
they have not come out to their cloud providers yet with the
Oh,
ability to do 2025.
interesting. See, I just assumed all of that would happen first, like that they would get all their ducks in a row
So
from
did
a.
we.
You are not incorrect in your thinking.
We had that same thought. We're like,
Oh, that's
really?
interesting.
You haven't figured out how we're gonna. We're on separate licenses and stuff, and
Right,
we've been
right.
in talk with them for months to figure stuff out because we're like, hey, look, we want to be we want to be ready before you launch, to be able to offer it. But yeah, as of actually, I've not gotten today's updates, but as of yesterday, we had not fully vetted that
Gotcha. All right. Fair enough. Fair
with
enough.
Adobe.
Well, I'm pretty emotionally tapped out right now anyway, just with the amount of stuff that's going on in my life. So probably best that I allow myself to get more acclimated to the current work schedule before
There you go.
I do anything else. But I've just been, I don't mean to make this about me again, but I have been, like I said, not overwhelmed, but I've just been saturated. Like my brain has been saturated. And
So how much? Because it's been a while. When I started back to my expert role from my other company, it wasn't a large learning curve.
this is a huge learning curve.
Yeah,
Okay.
and yeah, let's go back to you because you're the introvert and you never get to. And you're always asking the questions. We make this show. So Ben,
all right.
you'll be the guest today.
So two thoughts for 1 second. So first thought is just that I've been pretty tapped out emotionally, and I've been taking this time to also work on a little side project with a former Envision customer, and I've been spending more of my free time just doing that. It's more just like an exploratory side project. It's basically just an excuse for me to think about different problems and software techniques. But between that and just feeling tapped out from work, I have not really been blogging very much, and I've been actually quite far behind on reposting, your posts and the working code posts. Like I'm just behind, and I feel like I've got nothing left to give sometimes. And that's a really strange feeling because so much of my identity is wrapped up in content production. Not that I'm not a content producer like a influencer or anything like that, but I do produce content, if not only for if only for myself, but I do it on a regular basis, and that's part of how I see myself. So that's been a little bit of an emotional struggle this year, is not feeling like I have the gas to put effort into that part of me as much as dedicated. So so there's that, and then the learning curve at work, which is part of why I'm really tapped out, I think, emotionally, is just one, getting to know the new team. There's always a certain degree of exhaustion from that. Understanding how the company works, new technologies. It's Cold Fusion, but they use the CF Wheels framework, which I've never used before, and it's so interesting.
That's like Peter's baby, right? I think I read that he maintains it or something.
Yes, I think he's the core maintainer at this point. He didn't start it, but he's become the core maintainer over the years. And so I'm excited to learn something new, but it's a lot to learn. It's based on the Ruby on Rails framework, which also has a tremendous amount of stuff in it. And I was never a Ruby on Rails developer. So it's like I'm trying to understand the problem domain, which is radically new. And I'm trying to understand the framework that we're using to build the application, which is also fairly radically new. It's a Rails, or Wheels is what people refer to as a convention over configuration framework, which means that things just magically happen if you put code in the right place and you name it the right thing. The framework just knows how to find things and knows how to build links between pages, and there's a lot of helper utilities. and there's a built-in ORM and object relational mapper so that it'll persist your data to the database sort of magically. And
So you don't
when
have to write
you
any of that?
it it writes a lot of it for you. It does a lot of kind of meta programming behind the scenes, which when you understand how it works, it can make you much more effective. But I don't understand how it works, so it's like all the things that are normally muscle memory for me are now
Yeah.
going to the documentation, going back to the code, going to the documentation, going back to the code. And it's like you, the royal you. It's like you took the one thing that I was really good at, which was just remembering all the stuff and typing it out of practice, and you took it away, and now I have to relearn all of the low level stuff again.
You
Uh,
don't have to do your copy paste coding anymore. Where
well,
if you
I still do love me some copy paste though. So okay, so I'm learning wheels, and then the problem domain is just wildly different. It's a truck parts manufacturing company, and the terminologies that people use, the processes that the company uses, the processes that the engineers use. Like when I say engineers, I mean the people on the manufacturing floor who are drilling holes into metal and buffing and grinding and bending and packaging. Like they have all these words that mean something very specific to them, and all things
so
about
so
purchase
so
orders.
you
And
what you're involved with, is it like their ERP system? Does it the manufacturing of the MRP system?
okay, so this is one of those things. In every meeting, I ask like 1,000 questions, and I know that they're going to get sick of me pretty soon. But they do say the term ERP all the time,
Okay.
and like they said it too many times without me asking what it meant, and now I feel like I can't actually go and ask what it
Oh,
means.
enterprise resource planning. It's like the business
Ah,
software.
okay, yes. So they definitely use an ERP, and we're building a system that I think it either interfaces with the ERP or interfaces and then will like slowly take over parts of the ERP, I believe.
Okay.
I don't want to say anything, one, that I'm not supposed to, and also two, that
Oh,
I just
yeah,
don't
yeah.
understand. But it's 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 a there's little acronyms for everything, and the people who have been working there for a long time are just throwing around acronyms, and I'm constantly like, I'm sorry, what is that? What are you talking about? So
So
it's a lot.
you're actually I have no idea how old you are, but I don't even know how old I am. How old am I? I was born in 1977, so I'm 47. I'll
Okay,
be
yeah, you're
48
3
this year.
years older. I'm
Okay.
45.
But we were alive about at the same time. When I first started at Xbyte, I did something similar. I would ask tons of questions every time because I came from a software space. I did not know the computer hardware business when I first got here, and the someone lovingly took a picture of like Johnny Five from Short Circuit, like input, and like you need to come like in like your meetings with like a Johnny Five shirt. I don't know what the age bracket is of the people working there, um, but
I
it may hit
Oh
if
man,
they're the right age.
I grew up with Short Circuit. I loved it. Johnny Five, Alive.
Yeah,
Oh, classic.
great movie.
That's another thing. Just talking about team cultures. I came from a Envision was very much a pop culture oriented company. Constantly people talking about movies and TV shows, and this is much more of a business world, and it's just not as water coolery, at least maybe just not to me yet, or maybe I'm doing it in the wrong places. But everybody seems much more like getting work done. That's what we're here to do.
That's no fun.
Everybody's very nice, though, to be clear. I don't
Yeah,
want to I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. These are all very nice, very bright people. I
yeah.
mean, the amount of information that these people have in their head is astounding. I mean, all the questions that I have that I ask, they're just rattling off. They understand everything about the manufacturing stuff, about the distribution stuff, and the shipping, and the
Man, it's awesome.
yeah. And then on top of that, they understand the programming stuff that interfaces with it. I mean, it's mind-boggling how much access they have to it. Just in their heads.
I think we've talked about this. Is the developers who can understand context are so much better, I feel, than just a developer who's reading the specs off of a sheet and trying to kind of code to those specs. So I don't know if you guys get closer to the end. I guess if the end users are your own internal users, you probably have good access to the actual people doing the work to be able to ask questions. So you kind of have your own developers may also be product managers where they're having to kind of help with the specs or they're more involved in that process.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think that is all true. I think where I'm at right now, especially getting up to speed, I'm kind of one or two layers removed from a lot of that stuff. I'm dealing with the people who deal either with the customers or with the people who deal with the customers. And I'm very much shielded from all of that stuff, which is probably the right place for me to be while I'm getting up to speed. But yeah,
But
I mean, it's,
you'll be to a point where you'll also be asking them questions. And, the better developers I've known have been the ones who get the context. Where
well, it's super exciting because I feel like the first week or two, it was like a foreign language. They were saying stuff and I could not understand what they were talking about. It's like every other word was reference to something that I didn't understand. And slowly I'm noticing that the conversations are becoming less jarring. They'll say something and I say, "Oh, okay, I understand kind of what you're talking about actually." And it's I'm slowly building my little mental palace, my memory palace of how this company works, very slowly. But I'm excited to see that some of it is seeping in and becoming more permanent.
nice. I will say so. You asked me some of the things going on in my life.
Yeah,
The doing the kind of also related to the podcast, and one of our recent guests, and this is kind of a lesson for the audience listening out there. So, Mom, this is for you. Um, the I threw out some like feelers and was shocked that we had a senior manager or director from Verizon agree to come on the show who had
yeah, that
just
was
been
awesome.
who had just been at CES. So I mean, Andrew, kudos to you to agreeing to be on a podcast of our size
That
to
was a
just
great
kind of
show.
talk about things. Yeah, and so that was shocking to me. And so a lesson for everyone. So for the listeners out there, um, don't be afraid. Just you know what? What's the worst that someone can say is no. They're already not going to do something. So don't think that you're not going to achieve something. Just kind of put the feeler out there. And he and I started chatting. We got on the phone, got on a video call one day. And we're like, yeah, we gelled. I'm like, all right, let's do this.
Yeah, it's I have this thing. I'm a terrible communicator. What I mean by that is when I'm talking to people, I feel like I have good communication skills. The second we are apart, I have terrible, atrocious communication skills. And because of that, communication feels very much like a burden to me. I'm sure you have sent me very many emails, and I have probably responded to half of them. And it's not like I choose to not respond to half. I'm just terrible. I'm just a terrible communicator asynchronously. And because of that, I assume that everyone else feels the burden of communication the way that I do. And I get extremely self conscious about reaching out to people. So
So are Monday mornings? I've found with Monday mornings, I get emails and I get replies from you, and that's like the prime time.
it's like I'm coming into the week fresh and feeling like, you know what? I can take control of my life.
I don't know what it is. There seems to be like a load of like Ben emails on like Monday mornings. All right, cool. Here's my weekly dose of Ben. Cool.
Oh,
But
man.
we also chat every week, so it's the I sometimes it's on me to I'll write something down and be like, all right, I gotta ask Ben about this, and then our podcast will come and go, and it'll be like the next day, and I'll think to myself like, huh, I gotta email him. I'm like, oh, I'm never gonna get a response. I'll ask him next week. That's fine. I mean,
Do you have a like a Slack, or how does XBite communicate internally?
we have Teams.
Teams? Is there a such a stupid question, but is there like a chat client for Teams?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if it was just a Zoom
it's
kind of
similar to
thing.
like a Slack,
Gotcha.
and you can add outside people to it.
Maybe we could explore having some sort of just a private channel or something. I'm better when I can see something popping up in my little menu bar at the bottom of my screen. It makes me feel
Okay.
more indebted.
I'm also on Slack channel, so like I'm on the CF Slack. I'm on
Okay.
some user groups, some local here user group Slacks.
All
So
right. Maybe we could find a way to connect on Slack. Only because as terrible as I am a communicator about anything email based, I'm actually a decent communicator when it comes to chat for some reason. I think it's because it
okay,
feels much more one. I don't know. I'm just better.
that works. I'm flexible.
But one other thing that I've been trying to do this year is get back into reading. Now, I don't mean reading fiction. I've just never been a real fiction
Yeah, I'm with
reader.
you.
But I did read. So when I started working with Peter immediately sent me this book called Hypermedia Systems. It's
I've seen you quote that.
yeah, it's by this guy. Well, it's by several authors, but Carson Gross. He created this framework called HTMX. It's a JavaScript framework, but it's more about leveraging the behaviors of the browser more so than it is about creating a real rich JavaScript framework. That's neither here nor there for the conversation, but I read it, like I read a whole book, and I really enjoyed reading, and I want to just make reading more a part of my life. And I actually went to a Barnes and Noble the other day. It was a very small Barnes and Noble. I just wanted to get out of the house, and it turned out that they did not even have a software section in the book in this particular store. I don't know if that's just true most of the time now because everybody buys books online. Um, but
Yeah,
I'll go to a bigger Barnes and Noble to see what they have. I mean, I know I could just buy them online, but I like the idea of getting out of the house and going to a
yeah.
bookstore as part of the ritual of reading.
And
So
who knows? You may find something you were because a lot of on Amazon you don't necessarily get the browsing.
yeah.
You kind of throw in a book title, you get the book title. I know they try and recommend stuff, but if you're at a bookstore, you're kind of searching through, and you may see something that catches your eye more than the Amazon world.
And I know that this is silly. It's like a little bit of a gamification, a little bit of gamification, a little bit of nostalgia. But I have historically been reading on my iPad, actually over my left shoulder. This is my iPad back there.
Okay.
And that's what I've been using for books for the last, I don't know, 10 years. And there's something so nice about having a physical book. And it could 100% just be nostalgic, but I love the idea that I'm going to have this book. I'm going to hold it in my hands and then I'm going to put it on my bookshelf and I'm able to look at it. And I
So
just like that. It's like a trophy that I read this
is
book and now I have a physical
I have
manifestation.
where are my books? I have no where are they over here? Oh, you can't see because I'm like
Oh
there's
yeah,
there's my
yeah. I see
business
some
books right
books.
there. Yeah. I've moved away from a lot of the paper books because I do have a commute. I'll do the Audible,
Yeah, yeah. I love an
and I have a
audio.
big. Um, but is HTMX? So I've heard it mentioned much more in the CFML community than other places. Is there like a tie-in to CFML, or 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 maybe just it kind of caught on because the
I'll, I'll say
who
that
is
there.
it?
I don't know if there's a tie into CFML, but I think that so many of the hmm, so much of the community that is oriented around very rich, thick client side applications are React based, and I think because maybe the Cold Fusion world has not leaned heavily into the React ecosystem like other places have, there is the promise of HTMX and the promise of things like Hotwire, which I think maybe I've talked about before, is that you can bring your own server side technology, and this just dovetails very nicely with it, as opposed to things like Next.js or Nux.js or however many other frameworks where you have to be running Node.js on the back end. And if you're a Cold Fusion fanboy like myself, that sort of immediately says, okay, well, that's just not going to work for me then,
Yeah.
because I don't want
Okay.
to learn everything new. I just want to add some razzle dazzle,
Yeah.
and so it could be that the desire to not have a Node.js backend dovetails
That makes
nicely
sense.
with the Cold Fusion world and with the HTMX world and Hotwire. And they mentioned another one called Unpoly, which I've heard people talk about. I think that's kind of similar in the promise of rich interactivity without these really heavy frameworks.
Yeah, I think at one of the conferences, the Adobe conferences, I think someone was talking about just making your interfaces better, making the UI better. And I don't know if they were talking about HTMX or not. I just remember seeing that, and I thought finally, because for people not to think that CF is an outdated language, you kind of need some modern websites using it.
Well, the thing that we tout so often in the Cold Fusion world is just how easy it is, relatively speaking, to write the applications, because Cold Fusion just has a lot of affordances and it removes a lot of the ceremony that other languages have. And I'm not all languages, a lot of languages that are great, but Cold Fusion, there's just a simplicity to it, and the frameworks like HTMX, like Hotwire, they're leaning into that as well. They're saying, okay, leverage all of the power that you already have on the back end. And instead of, for example, instead of creating an API that returns giant JSON payloads and then having to, on the client side, translate those JSON payloads into HTML using templating, the API can just return the HTML directly, and HTMX will just plop it right into the page. And then it's like all of the logic for rendering exists on the server side in the CFML templating where it's existed for the last 30 years. And so it just dovetails very nicely, I think, with the Cold Fusion mindset.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking from theory here. It's not like I've built an HTMX application. Although, so in the book, one of the nice things that he does in the book, Carson walks through this contacts app, like name, email, phone number kind of contacts.
Yeah.
So he basically just creates a CRUD type application, list of contacts. You can view a contact, you can edit a contact, you can delete a contact. And he uses Flask, which I think is a Python framework, or it's a PHP framework. I'm not exactly sure. But what I would like to do is take his little sample app and build it in Cold Fusion and then iterate on it the way that he iterated, to add little bits to kind of handhold people through integrating HTMX into an application. I mean, I don't have any bandwidth for it right now, but it's on the list of things I want to do.
You're like Q3 after some learnings going on.
But okay, if I can go on a tangent for a second here. Yeah. This is okay. Maybe this is just me complaining, so take it with a grain of salt. But I get so frustrated when I hear about people who just have so many things going on in their life and they seem to be able to manage it. And I have like 2 things going on in my life and I am tapped out. And the idea that I would add another thing, it's like, oh, what are you, nuts? I'll do that in months when I have some breathing room. And I'm either angry at the people who say that they have a lot going on but don't actually have a lot going on, or I'm jealous at the people who have a lot going on and actually just deal with it really well.
Or it looks like they deal with that really well.
Right.
Really,
say they
their
deal
life's
with it
chaos.
well, but they are not.
Yeah. It's the fake social media that you're looking at. They're like, oh, I got this handled, and like, you're just completely razzled every day and stressed out and not sleeping, and you're like, I got the best of everything. I'm enjoying life. I'm fulfilled at work. You're on an amazing podcast or 2.
There you go. World class, my friend. And as always, I'm always so thankful that you're the one who actually puts this all together. If I had to put work into this, I think it'd be very challenging. I mean, not that, I set aside time and I'm trying to be prepared and I have but I don't do the planning, and that is the hardest part by far in my world. Planning stuff.
Well, for me, like I said, because you have the context around most of the guests, the hardest part for me would be to keep them engaged without having that context, and without having you be part of the show. It would take me hours more every week to just do the research enough to be able to have a good conversation with these guests. But I can say, okay, I can do enough to understand it, and then I know Ben's gonna have some extra context. I can kind of layer on top of that and just take my own take on things.
There we go. We love it when a plan comes together.
Yeah, I will say I'll add one other thing is we don't often we talk a lot about coding and stuff but I will say on a personal note, on a family note, one of the things I've been doing this year that's new is trying to do at least one something a month with just a single kid because I have 3 kids.
Interesting.
So they'll be 9, 11, and one's already 13 this year. She already had her birthday. So my one son is in the student council, I think is what it's called. So once a month, he has to be to school super early. So when he does that, I take the daughter who normally goes to school with him. She and I will go out to a breakfast together.
Nice.
And then so that's our daddy Lily time. And then for Tristan, who's the middle boy, he does Taekwondo in the afternoons. So I'll take one time and say, hey, you know what? Instead of us going home to grab dinner, not me, my son.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
No. I've thought about because he just started a couple months ago. He's like a yellow belt. And I actually thought, I'm like, I just sit here for 45 minutes watching him because it'd be silly for me to drop him off and drive 15 minutes home.
Right.
Be there for 15 minutes and come back. So I was like, all right, I'll just hang out here. It's fine. But I've actually been thinking, I'm like, I may do it just to kind of like I'm otherwise just standing here. I might as well do something for 45 minutes, not playing on my phone.
Okay.
But yeah, so for him, once a month, I'll take him out we'll go out to dinner after Taekwondo. But the harder one is figuring out with a 13-year-old girl. Like, all right, because my wife often does her stuff because it's volleyball and she's kind of in the mom's group for volleyball. But so I gotta find more time to hang out with Fiona. But yeah, that's the challenge this year for me is at least once a month to do something just with a single kid so that they can have their own time. And it was funny. My daughter, she and I were hanging out, the younger daughter, on Saturday. I had to go to the Genius Bar at Apple. I actually I don't know if we talked about this. I was sold fake AirPods.
Really? No, we did not talk about that.
Okay, so we have a few minutes here. We can not that we have a hard cut stop at some point, but I know you have to eat. From a Walmart store. So word of caution from people from a Walmart store.
Like you took it off the shelf.
We do Walmart delivery, so I did not. Well, I was not the one who took it from the shelf.
Okay, gotcha.
But the worker took it off their shelf and put it with our grocery order, and it arrived with groceries. So it was not their third party or someone like that. It was actually on their shelf. I first experienced it. So I bought them and I needed them because I used these are not the fake ones, but I use them for the hearing on the shows, so I don't have like headphones dangling and stuff.
Yeah.
Or the big ones. I didn't have like wired ones like you have, and so the first thing I did was I paired them with my computer, and it was a little chilly here, so I wasn't going out running in the mornings, so I didn't really need them for anything else. So I was like, all right, just whatever. And then I tried to pair them to I then paired them to my phone. And I had a little bit of issues with that. And then all of a sudden I couldn't get them to just jump to my watch. And they should. It's a whole Apple ecosystem. And they should seamlessly just jump.
Right. This is what they do.
I figured out that I'm like, hey, they had some affinity to whatever they were paired with. And that was the only thing they would connect to. Like, that's really weird. And I spent an hour troubleshooting with a tech from Apple on the phone. And he said, you know what? They sound fake. I was like, no way. I'm like, I bought them from the store. They were sealed. When I checked to make sure, I peeled the seal off.
Yep.
So I'm like, okay, I'll go to the Genius Bar because you think they should be taking a look at it. I'm like, that's just and because it had been cold here and not gone out running, and it'd been past the time to be able to return them to Walmart. Because that was my go-to. I'm like, okay, yeah, you want me to go to Genius Bar? I'm like, I don't care to do that. I just want to get so much to go to Walmart, and I couldn't do that. So I was like, fine, I'll go to Genius Bar. Went to Genius Bar, and they looked at it. I'm like, oh yeah, I can see the logo looks a little bit too faded. and the
Crazy.
start of the year, your warranty is too far before you bought them. That doesn't look right. It looks like someone bought them and maybe returned them. The After going through some stuff, I realized that the serial number was different. The serial number on the box was not the serial number of the AirPods.
Interesting.
And I knew that. I found that out after the fact.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, kudos to Walmart. And I expect some sponsorship of the show. The back, I'd say a year or so ago, I would dread customer service from Walmart. If I bought something and let's say it was under a certain dollar amount, I'm like, I don't have the mental pain it would take on my body to have to go through their line of customer service and to have to figure out a way to justify to return the stuff to the person. It was just terrible. I'm like, and if you didn't have the receipt, it was this big deal. And I'm just
Right.
and I would go to Target and I didn't have an account with them. And they'd be like, oh, no problem. Let me just scan it. Let me scan your credit card. Okay, yeah, we found it. You're good. And it was so easy. I'm like, I don't keep receipts. I was like,
Did they?
well,
I mean, did they have any explanation? I mean, they must not. They can't have any explanation.
they have no idea. The only thing I can imagine is someone got them, swapped them out in the box with fake ones,
return them.
and then resealed it and returned it.
Just bonkers.
But so Walmart, so I went there first, and they were like, "Oh, we can't return it, or we can't." The manager says, "I can't override it. The system's not allowing me to override it." They're like, "But do you have the box?" And I had gone just from Apple Store to Walmart. I didn't, but I did keep the box.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, "Yeah, I do. I was actually about ready to throw it away, but I do still have the box." So they were able to. They went on like one machine. They couldn't do it, but like, let's try this other one. They tried this other one and couldn't do it. But they're like, hey, you know what? There's an order program on the cash register. I think I can do it there. So then the manager went to the cash register, and then that did allow her to do the override necessary. And so she was able to return it, and then they'd actually gone up in price. She's like, hey, just come back to me. We'll take care of you to make sure you're not paying more. And they were amazing. And to kind of go full circle to our AI conversations we often have on these shows. So I was busy doing some things. So I had my AI agent say, I'm like, hey, I need to figure out how to write a good review about this one particular Walmart store. And I noted down her name to make sure I mentioned her by name. And so my AI agent found on the Walmart site where I needed to go to do this. So I didn't have to kind of do their website. So thank you, ChatGPT.
So it opened up the browser interface inside of ChatGPT and found the UI that you had to use.
Yeah, I have the expensive ChatGPT,
yeah.
The really expensive one. So I have access to their agents to just say, hey, go do this for me, and it basically operates a browser window.
Very cool.
And you can actually watch it click around the browser if you want to. But I was doing something else, and so I told ChatGPT to go find where it was, and it just stopped right there. Like, okay, perfect. I'm like, let me type my thing right here for you, and then just did it. And so it was a nice little savings from. I mean, it's not a huge savings, but you know what?
No, I'm trying to understand how it applies to my life, so I'm trying to experiment more with these things. So it's good to hear people's use cases.
So
did you get a new pair of AirPods then eventually?
Yeah. So at that store, I went and I swapped them out with they don't do returns. So I went and I bought a new pair, and you have to check out at the electronics cash register.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought them. They were more expensive, but I had a gift card from the return of my old ones. And so I used that to pay for all but like $60 of it because that was the difference in price. And then I went back to them, to the front customer service, and they were able to basically give me a new gift card they did a return and then credited me back $60. And they said, hey, we can give you a gift card, and we buy enough. I was like, that's fine.
Yeah.
But
crazy stuff though. I mean, it's just
you
never think that you can't trust the thing that the store is selling you.
Yeah, and I purposely had the store do it. Went to a store because I didn't want a third party.
Right.
And I looked at the seal. I'm like, it's sealed. So in my head, I'm like, wow. But now I know to, as soon as I do that, to check the serial number that's reported on your phone to make sure it matches what's on the box. And if not, they're fake.
Just bonkers. Bonkers, I say.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Should we
I think we can call it a day. We
wrap it up there?
Yeah, I mean, on that. I mean, we were able to at least get an AI for a couple seconds.
There you go.
It's not a Ben and Ryan show unless we talk about AI for a couple of seconds.
I've been doing a lot of ChatGPT. Actually, that's so the as I'm trying to learn up on CF Wheels, I have a ChatGPT conversation, if I think that's the right word, for Wheels, and I'm trying to ask it questions. But oh man,
how well does it know Wheels?
It's like
probably not.
It's so hard to tell because I have very open-ended conversations with it, and I have very specific conversations with it. So I'll say, I'm trying to save a model to the database, but there are errors. How do I get the errors? And it walked me through how to get it, and I try it, and Cold Fusion complains that the method I'm trying to call doesn't exist. So I say to ChatGPT, it's complaining, and it goes, "Oh, of course, because that method doesn't exist. You should use this method." So then I go to use this method. Cold Fusion says it doesn't exist. So I come back and I tell ChatGPT, it says, "Well, of course it doesn't exist. So why would you use it? You should try this other one." And then the third method that it tells me is the one that actually works. And so, like, I get it. I get that it's just a statistical model, but it's so frustrating that it makes those kind of mistakes so confidently still.
Yeah, for lesser known things, I found where it will make assumptions that would be true in other languages or other things. So we have an ERP that's probably they want to think I'm sure they in their world they're tier 1, but they're not like the NetSuite. They're not that big. They're getting there, but they're not quite at that level. So in the early days of ChatGPT, I haven't tried it recently, I'd ask it questions, and I'd mention this ERP that we use. And I'll mention them, Acumatica. They're actually pretty good. We love Acumatica. But the thing is that when it does things that are outside the norm, ChatGPT, based on, again, a statistical model, it produces a word that should be there.
Right.
So, and 90% of places do it the same way. And so it tells you to do this, and I saw the results. I'm like, no, that you can't do that, because that's why I'm coming to you, because that would be the easy way,
right?
The way everyone else does it, they don't do it that way. So, but yeah, I found that too, is that stuff. Something you could try is to create either a project or a custom GPT where you feed it in like CF docs and CF Wheels docs, so that it has that already. And it has that context, and then
that's the stuff I don't understand how to do yet. But I know that that's possible. I just don't know how to do it. But I only recently upgraded to a paid plan, so I was on the free tier for until now, and then I think just in February I upgraded to the $20 a month plan. So I don't know if I can do some of those things on the $20 a month.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
The agent that does web crawling is one of the super paid plan things.
Gotcha. But
like you have the plus.
I think so.
Yeah, and then the pro plan. So when you go to $200 a month, then you get some more stuff.
Is the deep research, that's the $200 a month plan?
No. I don't know.
That's the one where it'll go off for like 20 minutes and do research and then come back to you.
Do you on yours? So on the normal ChatGPT window, if you have a deep research button, then it's available there. I haven't used it, but I've in the last few weeks I've jumped on the $200 plan.
I don't see a deep research.
Okay, so yeah, that is a more expensive plan. Yeah, it's funny when you talk about, at a certain age, the conversation. Okay, when the new thing comes out, I'm just not jumping on it. It's funny. I'm like, I think it's a personality thing. It's like if the new thing comes out, I'm like, yeah,
give me.
Yeah, I'm like, I've seen like the things I'm talking about, the different things they can do. I'm like, man, I'm getting some FOMO. I'm like,
Well,
all right.
the world, you need the early adopters and
Yeah.
and the meaty middle and the laggards. I mean, everybody plays a purpose.
Oh yeah, I have the beta. I'm on the beta plan for all the
Awesome.
the iOS releases. And because of that, I'm like, all right. Oh, Apple Intelligence. I'm like, they got me though. I mean, Apple Intelligence sucks. But the problem
I've
is,
not
I was
heard
like,
great things.
no. But I was like, it's actually hurt me, because it's summarized in email, and I didn't know it was summarizing it, and so I assumed that was the only content. So I was like, oh, that's weird. Oh, that's okay. So I deleted it just on my phone, and then someone came to me like a couple weeks later, and they're like, oh, what happened? I was like, you didn't mention that. Like, oh no, I did. So now I don't do that. But
That's
yeah,
funny.
they got me because I was like, oh, you need the 16, and I had like the 14. I'm like, okay, let's go do it.
Oh,
All
all
right.
right.
So
Let's wrap it up.
let's wrap it up. All right, so we'll call it a show. So everybody, thank you for, hanging out with Ben and I, chit chatting it up.
Always a pleasure.
And we got 3 months under our belts, and I don't even know how many shows. I think 14, 15 shows we have something like that. It's been fun, and we'll see what the rest of 2025 comes out. We got some Adobe focus shows coming up because of their CF East and the CF 2025 launches. So we'll kind of go back to our roots a little bit for a month, and we'll be branching off again. We got some fun, exciting stuff. I'm sure a lot of AI discussions.
Always.
All right, everyone. Thank you very much. And as Ben always says, cheers.
Cheers.
Maybe that'll be my goal, to come up with a new ending of my own. All right, bye guys.
Let's see.